YouTube, what the crap's going on? HeirofCarthage here. Guess what? It's time to do some testing. I've had a lot of people ask me about Centigors, and rather than me, well, and I'm not saying I won't try them in a battle, I will. I haven't ever found a whole lot of use for them. So their price to me seems like it's too high for what you get. I mean, the stats on these guys is just atrocious. So look at that, like 35. Yeah, 60. I mean, just so they cost 800. So maybe to make a comparison, let's take a unit of Empire Knights, which are at 900. And if I click the Empire Knight and then come back here, you can see I get 90 less health, 65 less armor, 10 less leadership. I do get a faster unit, a lot less melee attack, surprisingly the same melee defense, slightly more weapon strength on the Centigors, and then way less charge bonus. So when you think about the survivability of these guys versus those, it's pretty low. And I think part of the reason why the cost of the Centigors is so high is because of their Vanguard deployment. And I'm not sure for any unit, honestly, right now that has Vanguard deployed that I find them highly worth it, because it adds cost to them, which rarely justifies, because Vanguard deploy itself seems like it's fairly easy to shut down. I could be wrong. There could be times out there when that's not the case. But let's run some tests. I'm going to test the Centigors out versus a different variety of units, and we'll just kind of see how they perform and see if we can find a use for them. And you can see they do Vanguard deploy. I can deploy closer to an enemy. They are fast. Right now they're getting a speed buff. I'm not sure exactly what it must be, just from being the Beastmen. So they're quick. They get around the battlefield in a big hurry. I'm going to test them out against just a unit of Empire Swordsmen. Decent damage done on the charge for sure. And not too bad trying to get my guys extricated from here because they're fast. But obviously you can see some of them get caught, and you're going to lose a few units doing this type of thing. That's typical with any cavalry though, so not devastating damage into the swordsmen by any means. But you can see that their speed is a lot higher than a typical cavalry unit. Once they do break free, they really take off and get away fairly quick. And of course there's three varieties of these guys in total. There's this variety, which is just your standard Centigor. They're very fast, shielded, and that's about it. They have Vanguard deployment. Let's just kind of see how they do trying to finish off this swordsman. Not a big surprise that cavalry on Warhammer is going to be pretty solid against stuff like this. I mean, they had no problem mopping through a unit that didn't have a bonus versus large, and it wasn't braced. Let's just kind of test these guys out against a few more units, just for the sake of understanding. I don't expect that you're going to be charging into spears with these guys per se, but we just charged that unbraced swordsman, and I want to see how... Okay, it looks like the spearmen are going to actually brace. Nope, they had their back turned still. So, I mean, it looks like if the Centigors get a relatively unopposed charge on an infantry unit that's of a lower tier like this, they're going to do some pretty solid damage. I mean, that was over 25% of the unit killed on the charge. So definitely a pretty good effect. And it's not unthinkable for a unit that's Vanguard deploy and high speed to be potentially getting charges against an unbraced unit. Because it's going to be quick, it's going to be moving around the edges looking for opportunities. After two charges, we're well below half strength there. If I leave them in for just a second, they'll finish this. So they seem to finish the spear just as easily as they finish the sword, really. I didn't take an exact stat measurement. But, I mean, against non-elite infantry, they seem to be quite capable of mopping it up with just a charge or two, probably two. And again, they are fast. You can see these guys do get around pretty quick, and they're mopping up this routing unit pretty quick. And with a fear build, having a really fast unit like Centigors could be handy. If you were able to micro away, enemy melee cavalry probably couldn't catch you at this speed. Okay, this time I'm going to test them against a more elite infantry, say like a Greatsword. So let's check this one out. So Greatswords have considerably more armor and much more hit points. So let's see how my unit does against something like this. I'm going to charge in, try and get some damage done, and then extricate. You can see on the charge against the other infantry, we caused over 25% damage, and we were not close to that on that charge. So obviously the the damage potential in a head-on type engagement like this is much more limited versus a unit like a Greatsword. Let's turn back around and get another full speed charge against the unbraced Greatswords, who've already taken a little damage, so they should take considerably more damage. This time, they did. Took quite a bit more damage, but after 2 charges, we're still not down to half health, and not real close to it either. Let's cycle back out and see what a third charge yields. Starting to take some damage myself. The Greatswords are keeping pace in terms of percent damage with what I'm doing to them. You know, of course, though, I don't expect an elite infantry to be easily charged out by a unit like my Centigors, which don't necessarily have the greatest stats. Just doing this, like I said, I'm just testing multiple scenarios just to try and gain an understanding of where these guys could be useful. And obviously the head-on destruction of elite infantry is probably not the business of almost any cavalry. Maybe a Blood Knight or a Grail Knight could get significant damage done. Reichsguard or Knights of the Blazing Sun. Let's keep charging and see whether or not we can even kill this unit, because this is not a likely in-battle scenario you're going to run into where you get to one-on-one, you know, an infantry unit repeatedly like this. Their general went down that time. I might leave my guys in combat for a second to see how they do. Greatswords might very well win this, but we'll see. So after a few charges, can my Centigors finish the fight? And it looks like they probably can't. Yep. So obviously against the heavier armored infantry unit, they're probably going to be best used in a rear charge scenario. Let's see what a rear charge scenario looks like. Alright, rear charge scenario. So let's go ahead and take a look at this real quick. So I've got the Greatswords fixed with the spear unit. I'm going to line up a solid rear charge opportunity here. See the Greatswords around 5,500 health at the moment. And we're going to have a pretty solid effect here from the Centigors. I'm going to make sure they get their full charge bonus there, which I think they did. So they do more damage, definitely, in that scenario. That's not a surprise, though, not by any means. But it still wasn't like a one-shot devastation by any means, like I think that you would potentially expect from a lot heavier cavalry that another faction would bring to the table. So I've got my Centigors free. Let's try another charge. Let's watch it up close, just for fun. See what the Centigors look like on the charge here. So, yeah, I mean, these guys are quick, and they appear to do pretty good damage on the charge, just probably mostly due to their speed. It's nothing to do with any fantastic... I mean, their charge bonus is pretty mediocre, and their weapon strength is okay. Melee attack is fairly low for a cavalry unit. So, I mean, a rear charge, I mean, clearly viable. The question would be, how do they stack up against enemy cavalry? And my thoughts are probably they're not very good. Let's take a look. I've got a unit of Empire Knights over here. You can see their speed is 66. My guys is all the way up at 91. So the interesting thing about Bestigors and say something like the Empire Knights is that even when they hit that charge speed, I can easily escape them. So you saw there that they kind of had the charge speed, and I can easily pull out of their charge range. Let's let them charge again. Yep, see there, they hit charge speed again. Or at least I think they did. They got close. I can easily outpace the slower, more powerful cavalry. So that's clear. You could use these guys to try and pull away enemy cavalry and just keep your distance and then try and wrap back around and outrun them. Let's see what happens if you charge them. And I don't expect the results are probably going to be great for us. Let's just see what happens in a straight-up fight where no one disengages. The cost difference here is only 100 gold, and the Centigors just get absolutely throttled by the Empire Knights, and that's not unexpected. So, horrible performance for the cost when it comes to just a straight-up engagement, though I really don't feel like that's their purpose. I'm just testing this to see. So there's different types of Centigors. There's ones with throwing axes too, and the ones with throwing axes have an armor-piercing missile. You can see though that their melee performance is quite a bit poorer than the standard Centigors. It's a lot less weapon damage, or melee defense, sorry. Weapon strength is the same from one of the others, just slightly less melee attack, and you're getting less melee defense. You have considerably less hit points on the Centigors with throwing axes, so it's something to be aware of. It's 360 less hit points. And you get 15 armor-piercing missiles that do 25 damage with 60 range, and I believe they can fire behind. So let's see if these guys can successfully skirmish a heavy cavalry unit. I think that's going to be a fair question, so I'll see you out on the battlefield. On the battlefield here, you can see that there is a yellow circle around these guys, meaning that they can skirmish in all directions, or they can throw their weapons in a 360-degree arc, even while retreating. And their speed is 85 at a base stat, and see it's 76 with the Demigryph Knights with halberds. That's only a 9 differential, which makes me think that if the Demigryph Knights hit charge speed, I may not be able to outrun them. Let's see what happens. Let's just first see, can he toggle skirmish mode, and can I successfully skirmish the Demigryph Knights? Skirmish mode is sometimes a little bit derpy, so let's see. Demigryph Knights, extremely high armor, pretty solid speed for heavy cavalry. They used to be even faster, I think, until they got patched. I really do want to see if my guy is going to throw. Huh. That's kind of interesting. I'm clearly in range. See the range circle there, but my Centigors aren't throwing their axes. That is kind of odd. Do they have to stop? I don't think they can throw their axes while they're moving. Yeah, they can't throw their axes while moving is what it looks like. They have a 360-degree arc, but I don't believe they can throw their axes while moving, which makes this unit completely and totally worthless. And without trying to sound mean, I have to question Creative Assembly really skirmish cavalry with 360-degree arc that cannot throw their weapon while moving. What is the point? I mean, this is the most pointless, stupid. Yeah, I mean, this unit is absolute garbage. The only way this is going to be any good is if you could park it right behind an enemy infantry line, and what are the chances of that happening? It's extremely unlikely. So its skirmish potential is 0, and its melee potential is terrible, and the price on it is expensive. So this is an awful unit, and them not being able to throw their axes while on the move is an utter and complete fail on the part of Creative Assembly, and it needs to be fixed. Yeah, I mean, 850 for a unit that can't even throw missiles while it's running away. And not just like, it's just horrible. Like, what player or even AI is going to let you park within 60 meters and unload your ammunition? This is pointless. It seems like it was probably a mistake, and if it wasn't a mistake, then it was bad quality testing for not catching something like this. The Beastmen don't have heavy cavalry. They do have Minotaurs with great weapons, and these guys are pretty good anti-large. Yeah, they're very good anti-large, but they're also pretty expensive. Giving the Beastmen the ability to kite enemy heavy cavalry with a Centigor with throwing axes that can actually throw them. And these guys are expensive. It's not like you'd be getting away with some kind of bargain, but just the ability to throw their axes while running away would make these hugely important. And it makes them, like, I mean, they could potentially be good against flying lords and all that stuff too, but since they have to park themselves to throw the axes, once again, they're useless. They're absolutely useless. So this unit, unless you all think I'm missing something here, and feel free to tell me if I am, this unit's garbage and really needs to be fixed, and it's really disappointing. I had no idea that they wouldn't throw their axes that way. Let's go ahead and take a look at the other type of Centigor, which is the Centigor with great weapons, and let's test them in a couple of the scenarios that we saw before, and then we'll test a couple of other things that Centigors may be useful for. But I mean, so far I'm not really impressed with anything except for their speed, and I'm not sure that their speed convinces me that they're good for anything else. I mean, talking relatively low hit points here, 4,050. It's nothing special. Again, low armor. All the stats are pretty much the same, except that they have great weapons. So we'll see. Let's check it out. So they cost 50 gold more than an Empire Knight. Neither unit is really meant for anti-large, I don't think. Let's see what happens. The Beastman armor is so low, and it looks like I get the charge here on the Empire Knights. The AI derped out there and didn't get a charge, so I would expect that my guys will perform pretty well right here. Do have armor-piercing weapons. The Empire Knights do not. So, of course, my guys don't have any armor. pretty straight victory there for my guys, but there was no charge, so we'll do a quick rematch once that one's over. So let's end the battle and see if we can get the Empire Knights to charge. Because if they don't charge me, then it's not really going to be a good test. I'm not sure why the AI would allow themselves to be charged like that. It is kind of an odd behavior. Like that they're avoiding contact. See that? How they kind of move off to the side here? That's such a weird behavior. I see them do that a lot, where it's like their cavalry is just programmed to outflank. And when it's a general unit like this, which isn't likely, you know, because Warhammer doesn't typically let you have units like this for a general, it doesn't know what to do because it can't really outflank me. And it doesn't want to charge straight in, is what it appears like. You gonna charge me or what? There we go. Alright, finally got charge on charge, so let's see how it goes this time. Let's check these units out head to head. So the Centigor is just carrying the large, like, polearm type weapon. Yeah, and when both units get to charge, the Centigors look like they're still going to clean this one up relatively easy. So let's take it to the next logical step and see if they can clean up a Reiksguard. Alright, so I got a Reiksguard out across from me. Let's see if it's going to actually charge me. Guess we never know with the AI. Looks like it is. I'm going to countercharge. Reiksguard takes the better of that charge early on, but it looks like my guys are starting to deal a lot of damage. A lot of damage. But it's fairly close. The Reiksguard cost quite a bit more than my Centigor, and my general died there, so that may swing the other way. Let's try it again. We'll do one more rematch on this just to see if the Centigors, if they don't lose their general, if they're able to keep their morale long enough, though I'm guessing that Reiksguard is probably the limits of what these guys are capable of taking head-to-head. But again, remember, these two units are not the same price. The Reiksguard cost more. So it could still be a decent trade for you in terms of what you get here. Let's see what happens this time. The Reiksguard just have a lot heftier charge bonus, and it appears to be taking a pretty solid toll on the Centigors with great weapons. Yeah, so I mean, it's a close fight. The Reiksguard won that just moderately, so it looks like it's going to be a marginal victory for the Reiksguard, or a small, or basically a loss for both. Let's test it against the Knights of the Blazing Sun, though, because that's more likely since they cost the same as the Reiksguard and seem to be better. Some of you may be wondering why I'm testing against just Empire Cavalry here. It's not so much just a test against Empire Cavalry, we could test against others. The Empire is one of the tougher matchups for the Beastmen, and that's why I'm picking this now. The charge bonus on the Knights of the Blazing Sun is ludicrously high, but they almost seem to be performing worse against the Centigors for some reason. Kill everything! This is a pretty solid performance out of the Centigors. They're still going to lose. Looks like it's about the same result as it was versus the Reiksguard. Let's try that one more time. Yeah, so I know that this is not necessarily maybe the role that you really want to bring Centigors for, but that's part of how we find out what role you want them for, is I test them in these scenarios, and we just, let's see what happens. That was a pretty close fight, actually. It was much closer than I thought it would be. 76 charge bonus on their guys, so they have 41 more charge bonus, 20 more melee attack, but my guys, of course, have the armor piercing. My general died early there, so this will probably be a massive victory for the Knights of the Blazing Sun. It was. I'm going to try one more then. Clearly the Knights of the Blazing Sun outmatched me here. But, question, I'm going to spread my guys a little thinner and just maybe see what happens in that case. Like if you're able to wrap around the Knights of the Blazing Sun, which I'm not saying your opponent would let you do, but I don't know, just curiosity. Do we get an outflanking penalty here? Combat even, recent damage, winning slightly. Yep, my general keeps dying. About the same result. Doesn't seem like it's a whole lot different, so they're not going to win versus a cavalry like that. Let's see how much damage they can do versus a demigriff, just out of curiosity. Alright, we got a demigriff knight with halberds out here. This is a pretty common choice against the beastmen, because it's also good against monstrous units. Let's see how the Centigors with great weapons perform against the demigriff knight. Actually, not bad, all things considered. when you consider the price difference between these two, that was actually a fair performance. Because the Demigryph Knight cost a full-on 550 more gold than this particular Centigor does. So let's check this out again. Yeah, I mean, that is really not a bad performance from the Centigor with great weapons. I mean, it's not great, but it's not bad. Let's try and think of a couple other things here. I'll be right back. I wanted to test another scenario. The fight with the Demigryphs was kind of okay-ish. What happens if we use Pan's Impenetrable Pelt, the Bray Shaman of Beast? So now I get extra speed and damage. And then what happens if I use a Wissen's Wild, or damage resistance? And then if I use maybe a Wissen's Wild form after the combat begins, which gives my guys additional damage. So if you had the right support, could a Centigor with great weapons be useful against a unit that otherwise would normally win that fight? And here you can see that the Pan's Impenetrable Pelt gives my guys 22% damage resistance for a full 50 seconds, an additional 24% speed, which is going to give them a little more impact on the charge. My Lord still dies early, so that's always good to know. It's still not looking like a very great fight for the Centigors. They still lose convincingly. So, and I'm not even sure the Demigryph Knight's got a great charge there. Now, I do want to try one more thing, and let's concede defeat on this one and rematch. And the Flock of Doom. Would Flock of Doom have more of an impact than both of those things that I just did there? So like an overcast Flock of Doom. So let's try that, because, I mean, like I said, the fight was okay-ish for my Centigors. What happens if we use Flock of Doom? Because neither one of those buffs really seemed like it was going to put our guys over the edge. Overcast Flock of Doom. Alright, pop the Demigryph Knights. We're going to pull off about 1,200 hit points. Well, actually, Flock of Doom won't work great on a Demigryph Knight, because it's got fewer models. So I'll have to test the effect of the Flock of Doom just by itself. It definitely helped. The fight's closer than it had been, but it's still going to be a Demigryph Knight victory. And fairly handily. Let's see how much damage a Flock of Doom even does to the Demigryph Knights to start off with, so I think that'll be a better test. So let's do that one real quick. I know I usually cut out all the loading screens, but then that might get too confusing if I'm cutting out that many, so let's just rerun this one real quick. My loading screens aren't bad. I got an SSD and a decent processor. I'm going to just put these guys back here, and we'll just see what the Flock of Doom can do. So they start at 46, 45, so we got, whoa, what the? Okay, I did get the Flock of Doom in. Yeah, it doesn't do a lot of damage. It does almost nothing. Yeah, so Flock of Doom's not of any value here. There is another couple of Bray Shamans, though, and let's see if either of them can kind of help carry the Centigors across the line in a cav-on-cav fight. So if we want to look at the other Bray Shamans, you have Lore of Death at your disposal. And Lore of Death, I mean, you got the one where you can cause terror. I don't know how likely it is to work on a Demigryph Knight. Spirit Leech, Fate of Buna, maybe? We could see how effective Fate of Buna is. And then the other thing that could help is Doom and Darkness. Well, then there's this Soul Blight here. Soul Blight and Fate of Buna, and these may be helpful. So let's test out a Bray Shaman Death real quick and see how they are able to help the Centigors. I'll see you on the battlefield. I'm going to try out Fate of Buna first. It's a relatively short range spell now. So they get hit by Fate of Buna. I engage immediately with my Centigors with great weapons. And let's see whether or not Fate of Buna is anywhere near what it used to be, because it used to ruin Demigryph Knights. And it looks like it's better than Flock of Doom, but still the overall result is about the same, so not all that good. So I don't think that's going to work. So I think Fate of Buna is kind of a pointless venture. Let's try a different combination. So let's try Soul Blight on an Overcast and see if that's enough to make the difference between these two units. So I'll fast forward for just a second, let the Demigryph Knights get over here. And then let's get Soul Blight. Ramp it up. Nice little overcast version. Okay. So we're taking away for 30 some odd seconds, 15 armor, 8 leadership, 22 weapon damage. The missile damage won't matter. Is it enough to carry my guys across the line? And the answer is not even close. So that's not going to work. Well, let's see if there's any other combination here. Not in battle, let's hit rematch. So what about Aspect of Dread Knight? Maybe combine that with Soul Blight and see if the two of them are enough to get the Demigryph Knights off the field, potentially. So let's see. So I'm going to go ahead and get ready with... Oh, hold on, let's pause it. Aspect of Dread Knight. Alright, so Aspect of Dread Knight, so my guys can cause terror now, and then we're going to get the Doom and Darkness. Alright, let's see if we can scare. We're not even getting close to scaring the Demigryph Knights off the field. I'm still causing, or was causing terror up until a moment ago, and it didn't work. And yeah, we weren't able to impact the leadership of a Demigryph Knight because it's just too high to begin with. So that didn't work. Let's see if there's maybe another way to do it. I don't think so. I mean, pretty much everything I'm pointing to with the buffs. There is one buff with the Lure of Wild that we can still try. And I don't even know why I'm testing this one, so I guess it's just a curiosity thing. I'm not saying you have to be able to use these guys to beat Demigryph Knights. I'm just trying to see if with any magic, they can make a substantial performance boost that would otherwise leave them. So this one takes away 8 leadership. This one has an extended effect duration, so let's try that. And then we'll still use Soul Blight. And we're still not causing terror to the Demigryph Knights. And they may be immune to psychology, I don't know. Oh, Demigryph Knights cause fear. Yeah. They don't look like they're likely to fall victim to terror unless they're losing a fight, which they just aren't losing these fights. Let's see what happens if we try the Mantle of Gahork. Right, so I'm going to use a spell here called Mantle of Gahork. It causes damage to my own combatants. It says there's a chance the damage will be resisted, but it's going to give my guys a whole lot more melee attack and weapon damage, like a considerable amount more. So let's see if that, how long does it last? And there is no overcast on it either. So you get 55 seconds. That's a long time, but it's only one unit that you can cast it on. So you can't have an area of effect with it. Let's see if Mantle of Gahork is gonna... Oh wow, my guys are definitely taking damage from it beyond just the Demigryph Knights, I think. And of course we are causing a lot of damage as well. A considerable amount of damage. And it costs 12 mana. And it still doesn't look like we're gonna trade with the Demigryph Knights. So yeah, not even with 12 mana and that much of a significant boost to my guys was I able to trade with the Demigryph Knights. So don't even think about trading with Demigryph Knights in a head-on situation. Now clearly, what you could do is just support your Centigors with great weapons with spears, Ungor Spear Herd, and that's going to be the smartest way to make them effective in a cavalry fight. I don't know, so what if anything did we learn about Centigors tonight? I mean, there could definitely still be some aspects of them I'm missing. I just tried a bunch of random tests versus Empire units. Clearly these guys are going to be good at running down skirmishers. I think, and I'll try to make them useful in a battle, but I think there's a few things that are going to make these guys probably not an ideal unit. And it's the fact that they cost too much, really, for what you get out of them here. The Vanguard deployment drives up their cost, and thus it drives their effectiveness down. If this unit was 600 instead of 800, you might have yourself a little bit of a bargain. And then again, if the Centigors with great weapons were a little bit cheaper, you might have yourself a bargain. But two of these guys cost considerably more than a Demigryph Knight with Halberd, and it's just not going to be worth it to bring two of them because you won't be able to support the rest of your army properly. So I don't see it being a good unit. The Centigors with throwing axes can't throw their axes unless they're sitting on their can, which makes these guys completely pointless and worthless. And then the Centigors are great weapons. You know, there was an okay performance out of these guys. They were defeating Empire Knights. Great. I don't know how often you're going to be facing Empire Knights as the Beastmen, because they don't have an anti-large, and so I don't think it's very often, if ever. I think you're more likely to face Demigryph Knights with halberds, which we saw consistently outperform the Centigors with great weapons, even when you took into consideration their cost. There was no effective combination of magic that really made these guys pull their weight against a Demigryph either. So, are these guys decent against infantry? Yeah, I think they are. I think they're a pretty decent unit against infantry. They're going to be great for running down skirmishers. The question is, when or how will that ever be effective? And the question, and the answer is likely probably never. There will be a rare occasion when you can make it work, and if you'll have some videos where you think you just made striking use of Centigors, please send it to me. I'd like to see it. But I think that if your objective is to chase away routing units or to have some quick mobility on the battlefield, you're going to be a lot better served by just choosing either Chaos Warhounds or the Warhounds with poison. And the reason I say that is because these guys are just going to give you way more bang for your buck. Yeah, they're weaker. They're not going to do as much damage as a Centigor, that's for sure. But they also cost less, and they allow you to spend more money on the rest of your army. And if the only thing you can use these guys for reliably is running down skirmishers and weak infantry and other stuff like that, Warhounds are already better, in my opinion. So I don't see the Centigors being a useful unit. Please tell me if you differ from me in the comments. I'd be happy to hear your thoughts. And like I said, please send me replays if you think you have proof against what I'm thinking. But yeah, just as we continue the focus on Beastmen here, I just don't see the Centigors being a viable unit. What other units do you want to see me dig into with the Beastmen? Is there anything in particular? If you think I missed any particular test here, maybe the next time I test a Beastmen unit, I can retest something with the Centigors if you all think I really missed something big, and I will check out the comments to see if that's the case. Like I said, hope you all enjoyed this. Had fun making it for you. I like looking into this stuff myself because it kind of gives me an idea on how to properly use things once you mess around with it a little bit. Like I said, look forward to seeing your thoughts. Appreciate MSI for sponsoring the build that I'm recording with. Helps me make some great videos for you, and I hope to see you all soon. HeirofCarthage, signing out.